Oh, there we go. All right. Well, we're just gonna jump right in. My name is Mervia Pataske is the last name. The show that I don't know. Have you guys had the chance to see the show? Can you access campus? Okay. So we have a show on campus. If you guys can access it, I don't know. Hopefully, if you are in that building where Todd Gallery, I think it is. So swing by to see it. I'm gonna go over kind of about who I am and where I come from and how I got into letterpress and book art. So it's just a little quick synopsis of my journey, so to say. So, all right. So I'm Mervia, and I actually come from Finland. That's where I'm originally from. In case you don't know where Finland is, there's a map. We live right between Russia and Sweden, so in the Scandinavia, Northern Europe area. And I grew up, can you guys see my mouse? Okay, great. So I grew up right about here in the southern Finland on the coast. So I decided that I wanted to leave Europe and come to America. I don't know what happened, but here I am. So I came to and did my undergraduate education in Edinburgh. And that's in Pennsylvania, in the pretty big snow belt area. So where I'm now in Kansas, that's nothing. There's no snow here. But anyway, so I went there and did my undergraduate degree here. Then I actually went back home for a little bit, a couple of years after that. And then I decided I want to get my master's, and I ended up at Penn State, also in Pennsylvania. So I call Penn State, well, I call Kansas State, where I'm like a mini Penn State right now, because it seems like where I'm here in Kansas, it's half of everything that Penn State was scale-wise. They're both state universities. One is 40,000 students. We have 20,000 here where I'm at. Both are like football crazed, which I'm not totally into football. Like, I'm not kidding. I did not watch the Super Bowl, in case that makes any difference to anybody, but I did not. But anyway, so it's been kind of fun. Well, after I graduated from Penn State, I ended up getting hired at Wichita State. So if you haven't seen this shocker, it was a little bit of a shocker when I found out that I got hired, one, to move to Kansas, which at that point I had only lived in East Coast, was in the central United States. And this was the mascot to where I was going to be working. So at first it took me a while to figure out what that even was, but it's a wheat shocker and a woo shock, what they call it. And it's grown on me little by little. I was in Wichita State for about 3 years or so. I was teaching there, and then I ended up going to Kansas State. This was in 2007, I think. So a long time ago, 13 years I've been here, something like that. So I'm kind of Kansan now. My kids are Kansan, born here, raised here, and I don't see going anywhere anytime soon. But as I was in Wichita State, that was the first time I kind of heard about what letterpress was. Have you guys ever taken any letterpress classes, or do you have letterpress facilities? So if you have the chance, an opportunity, I would highly recommend, just to do it for fun if you can fit it in your schedule or whatever your curriculum is. I'm assuming everybody's art majors, because no business major is ever going to come and listen to me talk about this. But anyway, so, or maybe they will. So anyways, Wichita State actually had facilities to do letterpress. And my colleagues were really kind and very patient enough to teach me a little bit. I got kind of a taste of it, enough to kind of spark me to be interested in it. And then as I was leaving Wichita State and moving on to K-State, I was able to get a grant around that time to go and learn more about letterpress at Hatch Show Print in Nashville, Tennessee. Has anybody ever been to Nashville, Tennessee, or the Hatch Show Print place? If you've been to Nashville and never been to Hatch, you should go to Hatch, just for the sheer experience. That's their old location where I actually visited them, but their new location is at the Country Hall of Fame. It's a big building by the hockey arena or whatever big sports arena they have there. And this is Hatch Showprint. Well, their old building. And each one of these big blocks over here, they're either woodcuts or type, a letter form that's carved in the wood. And what they do is these kinds of show posters, right? So even now, they still make money, and part of the way they fund their kind of living museum situation is that they have clients, like a lot of musicians, bands, ask them to do their show posters that they then sell at the gigs and whatnot. So they're all handmade, letterpress. I got to work on some of these posters as well. Well, not these particular ones, but some of the posters that they had. And when I walked in there, I was just absolutely floored with the view. I mean, this is just one wall. There's multiple walls of type. And the first few days, what I got to do when I got there, I wasn't even allowed to touch anything except to put it away where it belonged. So other people had made these designs, and I had to go one piece at a time and put the type where it belongs, which you can imagine wasn't an easy job, but it's a very necessary job in order to learn where things kind of go. So the experience there was really eye-opening and great, but it was only 2 weeks. So, and at that point I was already at K-State, and I didn't have my own press or facilities at that school like the Wichita State did. So I applied for another grant to get, and I got to go to Hamilton, which is in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. And this is in the middle of nowhere. Like Two Rivers, Wisconsin is a really teeny town by the lake. And Hamilton used to make wood type. So they created the actual type for commercial use and sold them. And they still have a huge collection. Like it's again, like kind of historical living museum. And I got to go there and work for a couple of weeks there as well, which was great. While I went there, I was also very pregnant with my first kid. And this was in 2009, I'd like to say. Yep. And at that time, and due to my pregnancy and due to who I am, I've often wondered for a long time about the kind of cultural differences that Finland has between America and how people view women, and how women are kind of, not to say that commercialized is necessarily the right word, but I feel like women are put into this weird box more here than they are in Europe, as far as what the expectations are, how you're supposed to look, how you're supposed to behave and all that. And one of the things that really always rubbed me the wrong way was tabloids, right? Who's forced to diet, who looks like this, who wore this dress breast, and da-da-da-da. I don't care. I don't care who's dating who. I don't care who's wearing what dress and so on. It never kind of clicked to me why this is big news, but apparently it is. So again, let's call it a cultural difference from Finland. But as I was there and I started thinking about these things, when I on my way actually to Hamilton, I decided that, I'm going to start doing this series called Hollywood Times, just to kind of point out, if you take all these pretty pictures away, how ridiculous some of these headlines are. Right? So I made a whole series of these posters. So finally a baby. Okay, I still don't think Jennifer Aniston has had a baby. Right? This was in 2009 when they were talking about this. What is she doing to get pregnant? Well, probably none of your business, right? And so there's like, Christian Rihanna sick love. Oprah steps in, what is Oprah care? I don't know. Again, like they're all silly things that I just find not really newsworthy. And this is my personal opinion. You're totally, absolutely, entitled to have your own. But for me, these are things that I found weird. So I made all these series about kind of like bulletin boards that you would see a long time ago in the Victorian era. So from there, I kind of started branching out to more culturally related things. But again, I'm still really interested in the kind of issues that revolve around women's rights. So I make these Still This to Us part to bring kind of attention to violence against women. Same things. This is like health series I made about violence against children. And then another kind of thing that again sparks from me being a foreigner in this country in a way, though I've been here long enough that I don't know if I count as a foreigner anymore, but I still see myself as foreign quite often. So one of the things that I find really, really intriguing is the cultural associations that happen with language and that are different with each culture, right? And English language is, well, every language has their own slang words, right? But coming into America, right, as a foreigner and English now being my first language, it was really weird to find out how many different definitions regular words would have, right? So you say spoon, I think of spoon that you see in the picture here. But then if you look at it, there's all these other definitions that go with it. And these are from Urban Dictionary, by the way. I'm not clever enough to come up with all these by myself. But I used the Urban Dictionary for this series to kind of, one, educate myself, because I do work with students, and I have to admit quite often I'm not up to speed with the current slang. So I made this whole series with all these definitions are directly from Urban Dictionary, and then I just put, you know, the old etching images with the letterpress type on it, and it's this whole set of pictures, right? And they're all very interesting. So if you find yourself bored and can't sleep at night, you know, go to Urban Dictionary and start looking up really regular words, and then you find out and you stay there up all night reading all the definitions because it gets so intriguing. At least this happens to me, but regardless, it's fun. So this is probably the first book I've made, right? So from all of that kind of cultural association and popular culture, I started thinking, I was just thinking color, right? And black and white and the different meanings and associations we have, well, here in America, people have with all these words, right? So I make this book and it's all in black and white, and everything in it is about black and white. So I have printed either these old etchings on them, or I have printed words on them. So we have box, so that's referencing black box. We have black sheep, we have white Russian, white wine, black eye, white collar, black suit, black rose. So the whole book is kind of tongue-in-cheek play of all these words that are related to these two colors and the different associations we have with these colors. But so this book got me thinking, oh, well, this book stuff is actually pretty cool. There's a lot of problems with that book, by the way, but I'm not going to get into it because we don't need to know about all the mistakes. But as I made that book, I also learned that there's a lot I don't know, right? So then I decided I'm really interested about these books and I want to learn more about books. And I happened to meet this guy, Rich, who at the time ran Wells Book Arts Center at Wells College, and that's near Ithaca, New York, by the lake. Small kind of private college, but they have an awesome book art center. So again, I was lucky enough, I was able to get a grant to go there, and I spent a couple of weeks there using their facilities and just learning how to make books. Really no content, these are all blank books, but I learned how to bind things, different ways of, you know, putting stuff together, and I got to use the presses, which were fantastic. And Richard Kegler, who also designed these T22 blocks. Through him, I got to learn about these, and they're these, instead of types, they're these shapes. And when you put these shapes together, you can create type, or you can create shapes or decorations or whatnot. So I started playing with them, and they're press height, so you can type high, so you can use them on a letterpress. So I have a set of them, and I started using them and playing with those. So those are from there. But that was kind of where I got into bookmaking. Well, then I met Virginia at one point in a conference somewhere, Montana, I think. And she invited me down to Baylor. Then she never got rid of me after that. Dun, dun, dun. This is Virginia's studio. I went down to Baylor and I kind of went wild, as you can see. So she's got all this beautiful machinery and beautiful studio. And I went there and we did a bunch of prints, bunch of stuff. And we went down to Robert Kelly collection in University of Austin, University of Texas in Austin. And some of this stuff you can see is actually in the show, like this piece. So these were all printed in Texas. And same with this. So why do I do letterpress then, right? Those are kind of my bigger journeys of the different places I've been to learn about doing letterpress and bookbinding. Things that really kind of interest me about the letterpress is all the stuff I kind of don't have control over, and I also kind of can't produce on my own just as a designer, right? So I'm a graphic designer also, so I spend a lot of my time on a computer trying to perfect things, right? I live in the Adobe Creative Suite and make sure things line up and their images are in the right format and with the right resolution and all this stuff. And when I do letterpress, there's this aspect of tactility that I don't have when I always work on a computer. I get to touch the papers, right? I get to physically work with the paper. I get to kind of build things when I make books. And I get to use things like metallic inks, right? I'm a big fan of bright colors and metallic inks. Being able to overlay things when I print on black paper with white ink. Granted, yes, you can do that. There is machinery you can do that nowadays too, but I don't own it, right? Most people don't have access to that stuff, and trying to offset print something like this would be extremely expensive, because you'd have a black varnish going on here, then you have white ink, and then you have another layer of transparent white ink on it. So I get to kind of play with different papers and inks and colors and combinations that I couldn't do when I'm just working on a computer. So here's a couple of the pieces that are in the show right now. We have, again, metallic ink. I've done a kind of like what we call a rainbow roll. So it goes from dark to light. This one does the same thing. It's easier to see in person. Here I'm going for really fluorescent bright colors. Again, something that your inkjet doesn't normally kind of spew out if you just want to print something. But a lot of this stuff, for example, these two pieces, right? I'm combining things, digital and hand done things. So all of these forms are actually, these forms. So this type that I printed at University of Texas in Austin, then I have all these prints that I made from the typeface there, and I scanned it in, I digitized it, I started slicing things together, right, to get these forms. So this is actually one kind of like a polymer plate type of situation that I then created this form digitally, and then I made it so that I could print it on the letterpress. So I'm combining kind of all the new tech in order to do some of this stuff. And here, bright colors, right? I love bright colors. You wouldn't think it because I always wear black, but I do really like bright colors. So most of my work has these like ridiculously bright, either fluorescent inks or fluorescent papers and things like that. I also like the fact that I can print on weird materials. Like this is really, really thin, like wood paper, but it feels like wood. But it was durable enough that I could run my press over it to make this piece. So this is a book that, you know, if you get to go see the show, this is one of the books that I have in the show. And this is kind of where I'm at right now. I'm starting to take letter form, starting to play with them, starting to put them into 3D book form. And this is another one. This is the Celtic Circus. This is another typeface I printed while I was at Robert Kelly. And then I later designed a book around it. And again, this one should be in the show. I'm not sure if anybody here was in our book binding kind of workshop that we did 2 weeks ago, something like that. But this was one of the, well, both of these structures that I used here are the ones that we went through at the book binding workshop. So what do I do now? I make books, I print, and I do workshops. I teach my classes, and I do design. So that pretty much wraps it up for me. So thank you very much.
I teach at Baylor University graphic design. I've been there since '06. I'm not Texas born, I'm New York born, and I'm a transplant, if you will. I still refuse to have an accent unless I'm making fun of Texans, but y'all and fixin' and all that. But okay, so let me see. There's my story basically is when I was in 7th grade, we had to take an industrial arts class way back when, like in the 70s. And the type of press you see on the left is a little tabletop platen, which you might have in your shop. We had to print on these, and we had to make little linoleum cuts, and we made our little what do you call it, notepads and things like that. So this little tabletop press was something we worked on. And then jump forward to high school, they had a print shop at the Votech. I wasn't part of that class, but I was right next door. So I was smelling that ink, and I was very curious as to what was happening. All my friends were in that class. I was in the retail and marketing class. I was bored. But anyway, so keep jumping forward over time, and I got my graphic design degree. I got my undergrad at University of Texas at Arlington, and my graduate degree at the University of North Texas. So in between those times, I had a job at the Texas Women's University marketing department as a graphic designer. They had a big auction out in the parking lot, and I looked over and I said, oh my gosh, I used to print on one of those little presses. So I went to the auction and started bidding on these little presses, and I kept bidding. I was going to get them. Didn't matter. I didn't care. I don't have children, so I kind of have a little more money probably than families with children. Anyway, so I said, nope, I'm going to buy them. So I heard the guys behind me say, she must know what they are. And they were scrappers. They were metal scrappers that were just going to take them and destroy these things. So I call them the twins. They're my tabletop platen presses. You'll see another picture of them restored. But this was my first presses back. Now, in between, right, I went to North Texas, my undergrad and my graduate. So I'm working at Texas Women's University, and my friend calls me and says, who I went to undergrad with, and says, I'm applying to North Texas. You should do it too. So I did, and it was in the same town where I was working anyway. So I applied, I got in, and started graduate school. My professor, the press on the right, my professor had that in his garage. That he had hauled that all the way from New York. And he was looking to sell it. So I said, sure. So there I'm starting my little collection of presses, still needing love. They still obviously needed kind of to be cleaned up and activated again for use. Yeah, so that's kind of the history there. So it just kind of tumbled from there. I love printmaking, and I do a lot of workshops. So at the time, when was it? It was in graduate school. I had gone to this workshop called Frogman's Workshop up in South Dakota. They're now located in Nebraska. But I took printmaking from actually one of my professors that I took at North Texas, or UT Arlington, sorry. So she's a relief woodcut printer. This is a workshop we did where it was a reduction woodcut. So this was my print from that shop, and it inspired me to create the logo for my studio. So, you know, it kind of is symbolic as to children and not having children, and this rabbit, and who's, you know, the symbol of fertility, and I'm a female owned business, you know, so there was a lot of symbolism in this print. So this was me just, this is more of a, you know, just a glam shot of me setting type on my Vandercook. This was my first Vandercook that I bought, and just setting type in one of my locations that I had at the time. So when I graduated from North Texas and I got my job at Baylor in 2006. And I also got a grant, summer sabbatical grant, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm self-learning letterpress and it's just taking too long, or it's, you know, I'm running into all these questions. I need some sources and I need to be trained a little bit more technically." So I cold called uh, Ray Nichols, who's he and his wife Jill Seifert has led graffiti in Newark, Delaware, and I said, "Hey, I just got a grant. Can I come over? You know, and can I, you know, print in your shop and you can teach me some stuff?" And he was more than welcome. And it was the perfect. If you ever go to Delaware, well, you can look them up. They're all over the place, but they're really a great power team. You know, he's the thinker, he's from advertising, she's the creative, and she's the finesser. So everything they do is gorgeous and very conceptually based. So you should check out their website. They're pretty amazing couple. So in their shop, we just kind of did a lot of, they had a lot of type, and they had a lot of connections in the Washington area and into the surrounding area. So we went on field trips. Yeah, I stayed like 2 weeks, and we went on, no, 1 week. The first time was 1 week, and took me all over to other letterpress printers, and took me to the special collections of the University of Delaware and looked at the book arts, excuse me. And but this is in his shop. So we're printing this Eric Gill typography quote, which was perfect. This was kind of interesting because we didn't have enough letters to finish the print. So we had to do an extra run just to replace a couple E's that we were missing. So you'll learn that about letterpress if you don't know that already. What's in the drawer is what you have to work with. So, but it was fun. So I came back home and I just started playing around with my little tabletop presses. And this was just a postcard out of a call to a postcard. Can't remember what it was from. It was Ladies of Letterpress, but it was this postcard portfolio type of thing. So at the time I was living in Corsicana, Texas. I had since moved from North Texas, you know, Denton, Texas, down closer to Baylor, because out of graduate school, I got my job at Baylor. So I lived not in Waco, but outside of Waco. But this is me just kind of using the presses. I had, at the time, I didn't have much type and furniture and all the stuff you need for printing. I had a handful of stuff. So I made friends with the printer around the corner in this little town. That's something unique. You know, these small towns have these printers that in their back rooms, they've got all this letterpress equipment that's just got dirt on it, you know, dust and dirt from 50 years. And literally they hadn't touched this stuff for 50 years. So I went and made friends, and they needed a patio and I needed some letterpress equipment. So we made a deal, and I bought a lot of the equipment that I have now. But so some of this type and all these cuts are very Texas related, right? Texaco and the oil and the cows. And so a lot of that was in the collection that I had got from them. So this was one of my first prints. I can't just print one color. I'm like super multicolor, and it takes me forever. And that's just the way I am. But this was a lot of things that related to the town I was living in. And I was using those same resources that I had purchased from the printer. This is my first little solo show, A Girl in Her Letterpress. It was a lot of fun. And I had, at the time, I had a storefront in this little town, and opened the doors and had a big demo and had food, and it was a great time. So informing people is really top priority, and let people experience letterpress and traditional ways of making prints and things like that. So that's kind of a little bit more about me, and you'll hear more. This is there's a suite of print. There's 5 of these different ampersands. As designers, we all love our ampersands, right? There's so many beautiful shapes and forms, and so this print, which I apologize, I don't have all 5 in a row in a slide, but basically this group of type just kind of goes downward on each print, and it's all just words. It has to do with anytime we say things like left and right, west or east and west, myths and legends. So anything kind of having to do with that was just the concept around this sweet set of prints. So, but that's a blind emboss where there's no ink, and then it's just a simple gray. I think it's gray metallic on the print. This is another set of prints that I do. I'm finding more and more I love botanicals and nature, and it's kind of just reminiscent of my past living on a farm and being out in the woods. And so I love the time of day at dusk, or dawn, when there's darkness but there's light coming through. So I did this suite of prints that just kind of, I made sure there was wood type, metal type, and then the design in the background are the backs of the wooden blocks. Don't do that in your shop unless Kathy says you're allowed to, but she probably won't, so don't do that. And they're very filthy to clean. You don't want to mess with that. Anyway, so did that, and just got this transparent, the ink is merging with every layer. Things just kind of merge together. And as you can see, in this big owl, there's a lot of transparency just coming through. So and then song lyrics are what's in red. So I did this suite of prints. This is another one. I love the textural. I've always got to have like that base coat or base, or I'm always doing layers. It's really hard for me to just do one color and one layer. It's just tough. So they tend to always grid, so I feel like on top of this grid, I can get very organic with some things. I also use polymer, but I started pulling a lot of this botanical imagery in, and a lot of these are these cuts. When I was in New York, I found all these beautiful copper cuts of these advertising for women's lingerie. And so I have some of those that I use in my prints once in a while. But this is the time when I was learning guitar. So EADGBE, anybody who knows guitar, those are the strings. So it's funny how concepts just kind of pop up, right? I decided to go a little very opposite, very bold and different, and not as different as Mervy. She loves her fluorescence. I just, I kind of got fluorescent here a little bit, but not too bad. So I found these sayings that I thought were fun, and I found these old, I can't remember the Dover series, those books where you find the old engravings or woodcuts that are cataloged, and they're free as far as copyright. So I scan them in and I bring them into my prints once in a while, and everybody seems to love this octopus one. I kind of got this idea from sitting in so many faculty meetings. I'm sure you've all experienced something like that before. I teach book arts and letterpress as special topics at Baylor, and one of the book arts classes, one of the assignments, the last assignment, I kind of connected to a show that had an open call for books, and they wanted students work. So we looked at those. There's a set of cards that Barb Tenenbaum and I can't remember, Julie Chen did. I don't know if you can see me, but they look like this. And they are kind of helpful cards to help you make decisions about a process, you know, or a concept for a project, right? So we use those, and everybody got it. Mine was handwritten. That's why this colophon is handwritten. It had to be a poem, no imagery, and one color, something like that. So I made this what's called a Jacob's Ladder book, and put a little clamshell around it. It's called Hidden. So it's this is a, I can't never remember the name. This is a palindrome where it can go forwards or backwards. So on one side, the poem reads forward, beauty is found in everything you see. Just take a look inside, true beauty is found. And I can't see that word because you're covered over, oh, within. And then if you, if you flip it, it says it still makes sense, but it's in the reverse order. So within is found true beauty. Just take a look inside. In everything you see, beauty is found. So those are kind of fun to play with. And this book, kind of, if you know Jacob's Ladder book form, book structure, it folds down like a ladder, and then you flip it and it folds down again. And I need to probably have a little video of that in here. Okay, so another book that I had, I love symbolism, but I've had my wisdom teeth in my jewelry box since they got yanked out when I was 18 years old, and they were full blown. All the roots and everything were still attached, no problems. And they were in my jewelry box. I said, one day I'm going to do something with these. So I did. So I created this huge accordion. It's about 6 feet long. And I paired it up with a poem, a Tenenbaum poem about, it just looks like an, oh my gosh, what do you call it? The octopus that's in, yeah, what is it called? I just
Tentacles?
went blank. What? Well, it's
Tentacles?
the like the pirates always have the big octopus come out of the sea and it
Oh,
captures the
Kraken?
boat. Kraken. Thank you so much. That's what the poem's called too. Sorry. So I felt like it was this Kraken. So I was merging these two things. So in the poem, he's talking about the Kraken, right? And I'm looking at my teeth. So I go to my dentist and I go, do you have any old textbooks? So I can scan some images out of those textbooks. And sure enough, he did. And these are all molars, different shapes and sizes of your back molars, which are the third molar is the wisdom teeth. So I paired them up with this poem and made this big long book, and it just made connections, you know, as designers do, made these symbolic connections between the fear of having your wisdom teeth, you know, grow in your mouth and come out and burst through the gums, and then you've got to extract them. And so, and the fear of the Kraken, you know, and the poem. So it was kind of a fun thing to do. So I'm making a deluxe version of this where I've 3D printed. I've taken my teeth, got them photographed in all the way around, and made 3D prints of them. And I'm gonna make this, I don't know, deluxe book for this, you know, little something with them. But anyway, so that's that. And then they all have numbers, right? So the numbers come in as a design element. And these mystical facts is on the back of the accordion. And that's my own text kind of describing us experiencing the teeth and what we do, how we deal with them. So, and that's just the colophon in the back. Another book I have, I love paper, Japanese paper, different structures and different sleeves and, you know, slip cases. So this is a little tiny book I did for Valentine's, and just kind of, this is a double-sided, double-folded type of accordion. I love calculating and doing all kinds of figuring out things on the press, as you'll see. And so this is the back, the other was the front. It's a small book. I also take my workshops to other schools. So this just happens to be when I just throw it all in the back of my car and then haul it up to Kansas. This was actually in Kansas. And I did a workshop. This was in the School of Architecture. And we just laid out type. They were doing a project where they needed a cover for their this drawing journal or something they were doing out in the landscape. So I brought the type up and made everybody have to hand set their own type. They could choose wood or metal. We had all kinds of fun forms. Kathy, I'm sure you're probably cringing on the lockup. It's definitely, wood type is rectangles, right? Rectangles, squares, different things. So the minute you want to curve, the minute you want to jostle things off a baseline, you have to lock it up. You got to make it tight before you can really print it. So there was a lot of really fun lockups. We took all night doing this stuff, but it was fun. But they had to put a concept in there, so they tried to use type, the little bit that they had, and they had to use concept. And what did that mean? Did they flip letters around to make some sense? Did they ink it up differently? Did they how did they deal with that? So that was a fun kind of project. So that was kind of the wall of what they did. And that is always something I always try to do at a workshop, is like this last print that is one print from everybody's that just kind of makes an interesting texture. So now I'm getting a little bit more into the work that's in the show. So this is the waterfall book, and I just chose different sizes of type just to show scale, scale and eye flow and movement. And there's some red letter forms that are also within. So this is me figuring it out, locking it up on the press, and me doing my test runs. I also hired a paste paper lady, because I don't do paste paper that gorgeous. Her name's not coming to mind, but Martha. Anyway, so she did this paste paper for me that kind of went with the book. So this is me calculating where the red G's are going on the pages. And those are all my setups where I messed up and had to redo. Figuring out the book layout and all the calculations for that. And, where do you fold? Where do you have a tab on this gigantic long accordion? So these prints were, you can't type overlap, in letterpress. So this was me calculating different, how do you have a type specimen? And what are some different ways that you can kind of show it? So I hand rolled this with white ink on paper to get an idea of the ghost. Like, you don't always have to see the whole letter to recognize the letter. And here's the ampersand that comes in. So I start with my type, and basically I had to print it, then I traced it, then I scanned it, or no, this was all done by hand. So I drew it again on some glassine, and then I organized how the letters were going to go, and then I taped them up on Mylar to see the alignment of how they would work in the press, and then I locked up each form for each color. And I did that same forms, but this time this is just a different application with different colors. So, but they're all hand rolled. That took a lot of time. So, but it was fun. This is just the other two typefaces that I used. This is all polymer. It's just big, gigantic letters that say type, TYPE. Just overlaid. I just want, again, I'm back to the transparent and seeing what happens with color and form as type overlays. And that's the gigantic polymer. You only do this when you have a grant, when somebody funds your design, your work. And when you get married, or if you get married or whatever, that's my husband. I have him push the button on the press when I'm busy doing stuff. So he was my assistant during this process. This was just fun, kind of another workshop I did a long time ago, but this was just kind of fun, where you basically, I took the same font. It's the Empire is the typeface, and I have lots of different sizes of it. And then you just kind of line it up, figure out the tracking in between each letter form, wrap it around a piece of PVC, lock it up tight, and print it. I mean, it's pretty much that easy. And magnets are a great thing if you don't want to lock things up with wood. And metal furniture, magnets, as long as they're strong, hold pretty well. So these are just me having fun with those. This, we're almost done. This is my studio in the back of my house. So I had to build it so it looked like my house. That was kind of the rule of my neighborhood. This is years of collecting. And, but I did get a lot from that one printer in that one town that I talked about. But this is a lot of one side of my shop. And after getting into letterpress, I started getting into more book arts. So there's my twins. So they're all restored. And I bring my students over. I bring calligraphy groups over. I bring anybody who wants to come over for a workshop, so they're always more than welcome to come over and print. And I have a couple cats in the studio. They keep all the critters away, I guess. I don't really have critters, but anyway, so letterpress takes equipment unless you're just doing polymers. So, and I'm very traditional, love setting, hand setting, type one by one by one, one letter at a time, and locking things up in an old fashioned way. That's just my preference. So, but thank you.